Hello everybody, I'm Nick, and in this video we're going to talk about how we can use web storage in our Blazor application. Web storage is an HTML5 feature where it allows you to store some information locally to your users. It's very similar to how cookies works. However, it is way faster and it's much better than cookies because it allows you to store larger amounts of information locally to the user without sending it to the server every single time. This means you can just put some information there and just use it from your local storage, which is great for both server-side and client-side Blazor. Web storage is split between two different types of storage, local storage and session storage. The local storage is used to store information that you want to permanently store on the user's local storage. You can of course clear it on demand, but anything you put in the local storage will stay there until you explicitly remove it. The session storage, on the other hand, is used to store temporary data. And in fact, that's limited to a single browser window or tab. The data will automatically disappear when the user ends the session. As you can understand, this is a very useful tool you need to use in your Blazor applications, and in this video we're gonna see how we can do this. This video is part of my Blazor Fundamentals series, so if you don't want to miss any episodes, please subscribe and ring the sub notification bell to get notified of new episodes. So let's just jump straight into the code. What I've already done here is I created the history.razor component, which is a page component, and I have two columns, one with the session visits and one with the local visits. What I'm going to do to showcase the feature is I'm going to have a column with all the session visits and another column with all the local visits. The local visits will stay there forever unless cleared, and the session ones should clear themselves every time I terminate the session. To achieve that, I have two approaches. I can either make a wrapper around the HTML5 functions of JavaScript to support this session and local thing. However, it's way easier to use a package by somebody who has already made one. And in fact, there are a couple of packages, I think there are three popular ones, but my favorite ones are the Blazor packages. We're going to use Blazor Session Storage and Blazor Local Storage. So as you can see, the name is Blazor Session Storage here. I'm going to go ahead and add it in our project. And then I'm going to change that as well to local. So they're split between two packages because they're separate responsibilities. You might want to have local and not have session. So both local and session storage are now in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead in the page visit object, which is what I'm going to use to represent my page visit. So I have a URL and a datetime. So every time somebody accesses a page, I'm going to take that URL using the navigation manager and then take the current datetime now and put that into the local and the session storage. I will create a service to do that. So we're going to go into the services and I'm going to say visit tracking service. So we have our tracking service here and we need a few things. First, because this is effectively a key value type of storage, I need a key to retrieve my data. Keep in mind that session and local are separated, so I can have the same key for both and they won't interact with each other, there won't be any conflicts. Also, this type of storage is unique per origin, which means that other websites won't be able to access that. It's limited to that one origin. So we have a private const string storage key, and I'm going to name that visits. And then I need a few things. First, I need my navigation manager. So private read-only navigation manager and the name here. Then I need a private read-only session storage service, which is what I'm going to use for our session storage accessing. And then a private read-only local storage service, which is what we're going to use for our local storage. I'm going to go ahead and import this through the constructor. And as you can see, we have that here. And now I need about 4 methods. I could have 6 if I include the clear ones, but I'm not going to add them. I'm just going to show you what the interfaces have and what you can do in these interfaces. They're essentially the same thing, but they can access different type of storage. Really what this is doing behind the scenes is it's using JavaScript interop to access those JS functions that give you access to that type of storage. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say public async task. And I need to get back a list of page visits. And I'm going to say get session visits async. And what this method will return is return await session storage service dot. As you can see, we have a few methods. We have an event called changed and an event called changing, which you can listen to if you need to. We also have clear, we have key async, length to see whether that's there or not. We have remove, we have set item, and get item async. The one we're gonna use here is get item async, and I'm gonna say I need a list of page visits, and this Blazor package will deal with the serialization and deserialization of our objects on its own, so we don't have to do anything, which is great. And that's all I need to get my session storage for my visits. And I'm gonna copy that, and I'm gonna also say get local visits async, and I'm gonna use the local storage service. The rest will just stay the same. The interfaces are pretty much exactly the same. The next thing I want to do is to be able to track somebody visiting a page. So I'm going to say public async task track visit in session. And this code will be a bit more complicated. We're going to get the visits first, if I can actually type the thing. And we're going to say await get session visits async. And if there are no visits because it's the first time somebody's visiting the website, then initialize a new list. And then we're going to say visits.insert in the beginning a new page visit object. And that's where we're going to use the navigation manager to get the current URI of the user. And then the date time will be set to datetime UTC now. And we're adding it in the beginning, so we don't have to do any ordering afterwards. So it will always show latest first when we display it. And then what you need to do is just say await session storage service dot set item async, and we're gonna use the key and the value. And that's it. Now we're just gonna duplicate this code. And we're gonna say track visit in local. And we're gonna say get local visits async here. And the other thing we need to change is local storage service. And then we have everything we need. Now what we have to do is go into the startup and add some initialization code when it comes down to service registration. So at the bottom we can say services.add Blazor local storage and services.add Blazor session storage. And last but not least, we're gonna add scoped our own visit tracking service. So that's everything we need in terms of the service that will do the tracking and return the data. Now I need to go into my history Razor component, and I need to inject that service I just created. So visit tracking service, and I'm gonna give it a name, and I'm also gonna import it. And down here I was just giving it a new list, but what I'm gonna do instead is I'm gonna say await visit tracking service dot get local visits async, and if they're empty or null because of the thing not being initialized yet, then return a new list. And I'm gonna do exactly the same for the one below, but instead of local service I'm gonna use the session visits. And then we're gonna notify that the state has changed so it can be rendered. It's worth noting that I'm doing this in server-side Blazor, and that's why I'm using the on-after render async, because JavaScript interop is not actually accessible until the thing is rendered in server-side Blazor, because you just don't have access to JavaScript at this point. So you have to do it on after render async. If you're using client-side, you can actually just do it on initialized async and you'll be just fine, because the thing is just running on your user's PC. So with that out of the way, we should be able to just run this and see essentially just our page empty. So let's look at what we've done. So going at our history page just shows session visits and local visits, and they are empty, and we want them to be empty. What we're going to add next is the tracking bit. And we're not going to do this on every single page. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go and add it in the forms example page and potentially the index page as well. And that's it, just to keep this video shorter. So I'm going to say override on after render async, and if first render, then I'm going to inject here the visit visits, visit tracking service. I'm going to use the same name. And what I'm going to do in that method, of course, I have to change it to async and say track visit in local and also track visit. Let me make them a session and track visit in session. So that will do the tracking, and I'm gonna just copy the whole thing and also add it in the, is the counter one authenticated? No, it's not. Let's add it here as well. So in the counter, we don't override this method. So I'm gonna put it down here, and I'm just gonna inject the service here as well. So let's just do that. Inject this service and import it. Here we go. So now every time I access the form example page or the counter page, this should be stored in my local storage and session storage that I accessed that. So let's go and see how this looks. So I will run a session of my system, and as you can see, the history page is empty. But if I now go to the, I think it was fetch data, I was wrong, it was the form example, sorry, and then the counter, and then the form example, and the counter again, and then home, and then history, you can see that these visits are now tracked accurately. So it tells me when I visited the counter and when the form example, and then the counter and the form example. You can add that type of login everywhere, and this is not stored in our server anywhere. It's stored in the browser. And in fact, let me just show you where exactly it is. If I open the developer tools, I can go to the application tab, and I can click, there's the session storage and the local storage sections here. And as you can see, I have my origin here. So if I click, you can see down below here, we have the JSON that we're storing and the key, which is visits. Now, obviously our user, me being the user in this scenario, can change this if they want to. They can go in there and they can tamper with the data. They can just edit the value, which means that you should be always checking if you're sending this data to the server for some reason. So don't treat this as a guarantee that this will never be tampered with. There is a way to protect it. There's a package currently in experimental from Microsoft themselves that offers data protection on this level, but it's not officially out yet, so I cannot recommend it. But treat this as data that is subject to be tampered with by the user. Now, as I said, we have session and we have local, and the data is there. But what happens if I turn off this session? So session is gone, and I go again on the website, and I go on the history tab. Now all my session visits are gone, and that's because if I go again into the local and the session, nothing is here because my session was gone. The local ones, however, will stay there, and I can close the browser and they will stay there again, and they will only disappear if I manually clear them. So if I go to local storage and I right click here and say clear, now they're gone. So if I refresh this page, now they're gone. If I go back to the form and I start clicking things again, they will be repopulated. Now, this is just one way to showcase this feature. You can use this for whatever reasons you want, to store some keys locally, so you don't have to store them in cookies if you're just sending them only once every now and then. Some sites might use them to store JWTs or refresh tokens, so they don't have to send them every time using the cookie. It's up to you to do whatever you want, but this is how you can use this in Blazor. And I highly recommend that specific package as opposed to any other, because it's just easier to integrate. It separates the responsibilities, and it supports even the change events, which is a great addition. That's all I had for today. Thank you very much for watching. Special thanks to my GitHub sponsors for making these videos possible. If you want to support me as well, you're going to find the link in the description down below. Leave a like if you like this video, subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you in the next video. Keep coding.